Sagebrush Poisoning in Horses by Rachel Winker. What is sagebrush poisoning? It is a nonspecific, degenerative, toxic encephalopathy with intraneural pigment accumulation and degeneration, especially in the medulla, brainstem, and cerebellum. Basically, sagebrush contains toxins that disrupt the neurons in the brain, causing the horse to act intoxicated. It is also called sage sickness. A horse would normally come across sagebrush out in pastures and rangeland, specifically in the western United States, and it's very, very prevalent here in the Rocky Mountain West. There are 3 types of sagebrush that are a problem here in Wyoming. There's over 200 types total, but there are 3 specific types that are a main problem here. The first is sand sage. This type prefers sandy soil. It is a perennial. It is woody, grows up to 4 feet tall, and the stems and leaves are covered in gray hairs, which gives it a silvery green hue. The leaves are up to 4 inches long, divided linearly into segments. You can see they're long and skinny. The flowers are on the ends of the stalks and are rather inconspicuous. They blend in with the rest of the plant. The second type is fringed sage. This type prefers anywhere from low semi-desert regions all the way up to elevations of 11,000 feet. It is a low-growing perennial, and it has a woody base and a deep taproot. The problem with this one specifically is it becomes invasive in overgrazed areas, causing a higher risk for poisoning. The leaves are divided up to 1/2 inch and are covered in silver hairs. The flowers are on numerous upright stems that are up to 2 feet tall. They bloom annually, and there are numerous globe-shaped structures with lots of small yellow flowers. The third type is big sagebrush. Big sagebrush prefers dry plains and hillsides. It will not tolerate irrigation. It grows anywhere from 4 to 12 feet tall, hence the name big, and it is upright, branching, woody, and a perennial. The leaves are narrow near the stem and flare to 3 distinct lobes at the tip, and they are covered in gray hairs. The flowers consist of 8 inconspicuous flowers in panicles, which are loose branching clusters of flower heads. So how exactly does a horse get sagebrush poisoning? There are a couple of different main ways. One is not enough food is available in the pasture due to either overgrazing or snow cover, or if enough roughage is provided, the horse can get bored because nutrition in roughage is much more concentrated than in grass, so the horse doesn't need to eat as much, and therefore eating takes less time, allowing the horse to get bored. The principal toxins in sagebrush are sesquiterpene lactones and monoterpenoid oil, which is the essential oil, and these are neurotoxins. There is the highest concentration of these toxins in plants during the fall and winter. Unfortunately, this is when other forage is dying back, though the exact concentration varies with growing conditions and season. So, clinical signs for sagebrush poisoning. Many are similar to locoweed poisoning. The front end ataxia, endless circling, overreacting to benign stimuli. When they're tied up, will pull back, throw themselves down in a panic, then, if you leave them alone, will stand back up and act like nothing happened. You'll often be able to smell the scent of sagebrush on their breath or in the manure. But unless it's very severe, the horses will have a normal temperature, respiration, pulse, and appetite. How is it diagnosed? Technically, the only way to diagnose it for absolute certain is to send the brain to a lab, but It can be reliably diagnosed based on the clinical signs. A vet will ask for the history of where the horse has been pastured and whether or not that pasture has sagebrush in it and the horse has had access to that sagebrush. Smelling the horse's breath or manure, watching and listening to a description of the horse's behavior. They may analyze a manure sample for undigested sage plant material, which would prove that they've been eating it. May perform a full physical exam, including a complete blood count and urinalysis. And the vet may analyze feed and hay samples. The treatment for sagebrush poisoning is actually fairly straightforward, unless it's severe. So for mild to moderate cases, keep the horse away from any sagebrush, feed a nutritious, well-rounded diet, since sagebrush is nutritious, protect from extreme climate conditions. For the mild to moderate, the horse should still be able to control its body temperature, but you still want to protect them from the extremes. Stall rest may be needed to keep the horse calm if the overreacting is becoming dangerous, and control what it eats. If the horse is ataxic, make sure the stall bedding is deep enough in case the horse falls while in its stall. And do not ride the horse. Even though it might seem steady on its feet, do not ride it until it has fully recovered and been evaluated by a vet for normal behavior and brain activity. If the horse is severely poisoned, characterized by dehydration and refusing to eat, hospitalization may be necessary. Hospitalization is not recommended for the most cases, since they most are moderate to mild, but when it's severe, sometimes it is needed. IV fluids, nutritious food, and lots of rest. The prognosis for recovery from sagebrush poisoning is, on the whole, pretty good. Recovery time from when treatment measures are employed for mild to moderate cases is anywhere from about 1 to 4 weeks. With severe cases, with dehydration and refusal to eat, it can sometimes take up to 2 months. Unlike locoweed poisoning, saged horses normally make a full recovery. So, how do you prevent a horse from getting sagebrush poisoning in the first place? Either keep the horses out of pasture that contains sagebrush, or make sure they have plenty of space and food so they don't resort to eating it. In the winter, make sure they have plenty of good food available so they're not tempted to go and eat whatever's still sticking above the snow, which is usually just sagebrush. Don't turn hungry horses out on unfamiliar pasture, since they will be more likely to eat the first thing they come across, which out here in Wyoming very well could be sagebrush. If supplementing them with roughage, watch out for signs of boredom, since horses don't have to eat as much roughage of pasture grass to get the nutrition they need, and may get bored and start eating other things, like sagebrush. If overgrowth of sand or fringed sage is happening in the pasture, either thin it out or get rid of it entirely using a pasture-safe herbicide. And don't let neighbors dump lawn clippings containing sagebrush into your pasture. Why is it important to know about sagebrush poisoning? Sagebrush is everywhere here in Wyoming, so it's particularly important for the horse owners to make sure that the horses on pasture that contain sagebrush have enough pasture land or food to avoid poisoning. A fun fact. If a horse eats a little bit of sagebrush over and over, or not a whole lot at once, but little bit, over and over a course of a while, eventually it will become acclimated to it and continue to eat it in small quantities without issue. And we're excited.